the dichotomy of sexual orientation, faith in the Black church. Just your opinions on that.
What's up, everybody? This is Lisa Fields, the founder and president of the Jude 3 Project, and I'm so excited because we have season 2 of Why Don't Go. Now, if you've been tracking with us for any amount of time, you know that we have a very popular series that we started last year called Why Don't Go. And the purpose of Why Don't Go is to sit down with young adults to discuss why they left the church. And the first part, we just love to listen to them. I feel like listening is an act of love, and we can't be good apologists if we're not good listeners. So the first part of this series, I'll just be listening to them for 4 episodes. And then we'll have Q&A where they'll get to ask me and my co-host Rasul Berry some hard-hitting questions about church and the faith. Season 2 is located in the beautiful city of Washington, D.C. I know you're going to enjoy the conversation. We're back for the 5th episode, and we had amazing time of just listening in the first 4 episodes. And this episode, me and Rasul Berry will be answering some hard-hitting questions about the church and the faith. Let's get into it. What's up, everybody? This is Lisa Fields here, the founder and president of the Jude 3 Project, and I'm so excited for our next few sessions of Q&A with our panelists. Now, you've watched the episodes prior where we listened to them to hear what they were wrestling with and their thoughts and why they left the church. And this is their time to put us in the hot seat, me and Mr. Rasul Berry, to answer some questions to the best of our ability that they have about church and about Christian faith in general. So let's dive into it. But first, we want to go around and let all the panelists introduce themselves.
Yes. So Rasul Berry, live in Brooklyn, New York, host of a podcast, Where You're From, and also a teaching pastor at the Bridge Church in Brooklyn.
Dope. And y'all could just say y'all names again for the audience. Oh, no, you're fine.
Daniel.
I'm Tish.
I'm Trey.
I'm Jasmine.
And I'm Dennis.
It's good to have y'all back. I know. Did y'all enjoy the last few conversations as much as I did? So glad y'all did. So let's dive into it. What are some questions about the church or about the Christian faith that y'all been wrestling with that you felt like the church hasn't adequately answered for you? We'll do one a person.
I'm going first. We go? Okay. So I asked this question when I was sharing sort of like what left, why I left, but be interested to hear the response you all have. So grappling with sexuality, sexual orientation, specifically in the Black church, and sort of how our churches are filled as a former, I like to say I'm a recovering preacher, but as someone who preached for years, churches are filled with people from the LGBTQ plus community, and yet the moment someone may come out or express themselves in that way, they're immediately shunned. So I'm just trying to grapple, not really a question, but so much your opinions, like the dichotomy of sexual orientation, faith in the Black church.
Yeah, Daniel, that's a great question. And the one part of it that is particularly problematic is the word shun, right? Because outside of any kind of theological position or a teaching, kind of a core question is, should the church be shunning people who are coming there to grow spiritually and might have their own, aspects of their journey that doesn't align or conform with expectations, either by God or by the people or the community that are there advocating for him, which sometimes aligns and sometimes doesn't. And I would say the answer to that is absolutely not. I think Jesus made it very clear that shunning is not what we're supposed to do. He said, "Come, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." In fact, we see just continually him butting heads with religious leaders because he's a friend of sinners. Look at who he's eating with. Look at who he's spending time with. And that question to me is, can you be accused of being a friend of sinners? Because if the answer to that question is no, then you're doing it wrong. Like before so the first phrase of just that sense of shun is something that, regardless of where someone's theological position, has no place in no terms of the way that works. And the second part I wanted to share is I know that personally from my own experience because it was, I didn't grow up in church, like you all. My name is Arabic. My parents were in the Nation of Islam when I was born. And I didn't come into even thinking about spiritual things in a deep way on a personal level until my senior year in high school. And what ultimately brought me to that place was basically cheating on my girlfriend, not living up to my own sexual ethics standards. And so because that was literally the impetus for my awareness or questioning and searching, I find it really particularly disturbing that someone who is in a space like maybe I am, where they're trying to figure some things out or trying to get access to God in light of that, would actually be shunned or discouraged from being there. So that's the first part. I think the second thing is this aspect of what is a church community for? We were talking, earlier about that, and there is this space. Is it a space in which I am there to grow into something, or is it a space in which I have to check all the boxes off before you can then invite me in? And if so, why is that only selectively chosen and not, in any kind of way that's consistent? And that leads to another thing that I know we talked about a little bit before we started shooting, and this aspect of the sociological understanding of what shapes people. And when I think about homophobia, when I think about just a lot of the just knee-jerk reactions that exist, right around ultimately aspects of, toxic masculinity or just, even just misogyny, those are things that actually people have brought to the table outside of a Christian experience, but then has tried to Christianize them in different ways. And so when I look at it from like at a deeper level of what are kind of threads that are going on there, I see something that actually extends beyond necessarily a theological framework at all. It's just who people were and are, Yep. You know what I mean, and whatnot. And so you see a pimp out there, in the street. So now you just gotta sanctify it, and then you become, a pimp. Now, I got a cross now, so that jewelry, instead of just being at the club, makes it look different. And so I think that, but then the last part that outside of those social realities that really express a deep sense of brokenness, there is this other abiding question that I think is very much in play, and especially maybe bumping up against, some social expectations and norms, is like, who gets to decide a sexual ethic or what my body is for? Like, and so if there's an aspect where I'm coming into a sacred space or a space where I think God has something to say about every aspect of my life, does that mean that there are aspects of my life that ought to conform with whatever teaching he reveals, even if it grates against what my desires are? Or is there a sense in which I get to determine on my own whatever, I get to do? And I think that is honestly a deeply philosophical, theological, and existential question. And I think ultimately those things get rushed over so fast, especially when you're contending against social expectations, that people don't even go there. It's just like, boom, here's a quick little pithy statement. God made Adam and Eve, not Adam and Eve. All right, go be warm and well-fed. It's like, whoa. Like, wait a minute, that is so much loaded there in presupposition. So I think that's kind of, so to your point, or to answer your question directly, I think there's a lot of cultural biases that shape the way why it is that people can at the same time benefit and take in contributions from a community while shunning them at the same time. And it takes a lot of smoke and mirrors and sleight of hand to make that work at the same time. And it's a real tragedy that is a grievous thing that we ultimately ought to really, be weeping and lamenting over.
In the Black church, it is a don't ask, don't tell kind of mentality. And most of our gospel music has been created by people in the LGBTQ community. And I think it's frustrating even more for people when it is preached against in the pulpit, practiced in the pulpit, and openly accepted. That dichotomy and that confusion, because it's like you preach against it, but you allow it.
Right.
Or you preach against it, but you participate.
Right.
And it causes confusion. And I think the challenge is that we don't know how to engage with our sexual identity and then engage with scripture in a robust way. I always talk to pastors about when you talk about intimacy, all your sermon illustrations are husband and wife. Intimacy is found outside of sexuality. If you have single people in the audience, if you have people who you want to be celibate, whether they're LGBTQ or heterosexual, you're not providing a space for intimacy. You're like saying, oh, you can't have intimacy.
Right.
Only this is reserved for married people. And so it just seems like a hopeless situation, like you're putting people in a possible situation and they're not able to thrive and be full people. I think that's one aspect, but also I just think, like you said, we have to deal with the hypocrisy of it. Sometimes what we hate in ourselves, we project
That's true.
through on the pulpit. And I think when people are wrestling with their own sexual identity and things they hate about themselves, in general, it doesn't just have to be sexuality. It comes out in what they proclaim, as if they're talking to themselves in the mirror and not talking to the congregation, right? And I think a lot of times that's what you see when there's proclamation of one thing and participation as well, that people are struggling with their own selves and what they hate about themselves because of cultural norms they project when they're preaching, which goes back to the point I think you all were sharing about getting healed before you start proclaiming.
Yeah. Because
you can have a conviction, but the way in which you share that conviction can be damaging if it's something you haven't dealt with in yourself. So I think that plays a part as well. Man, that was an amazing question. I hope you got something out of it. Stay tuned for another question next week. God bless.
Why are you planning a church on this corner if it's not to help this community?